I tell people, let's leave it up to your audience, right? Let's let them decide whether this is snitching, because you got to look at the big case and how everything went down, because nobody really knows the story. So 4 years before I was arrested, in 2011, 2012, I had an attorney from Australia. I had a bag of cash picked off in Australia, $700,000. And this attorney by the name of Michael Croak came to me and said, hey, we can get that money back. I said, whatever, you're the lawyer. You decide what's safe for us. And that's what we agreed on. That I loaned the money to ZZ Top's manager as partial payment. And from there, the ZZ Top manager repaid me this $700,000 back in Australia. And that's where the money came from, because the lawyer had this story manufactured. So if I had to go talk to the authorities and the ZZ Top promoter had to talk to authorities, we were on the same page. So I think it was first week of July, the ZZ Top promoter, Andrew McManus, went in and told this fabricated story that the lawyer gave us, right? Next, they call me. And this is, 4 years before my arrest. They call me and the lawyer says, hey, I'm going to be at the police station, and I need you to go to the Beverly Hills police station, because they're going to call the Australian authorities and make sure we're all on the same phone. We're in the US. We do not go to any police station, tell anything about anything illegal. I said, I'm not going to the police station. Let's stop this right there. I said, let's forget it. He goes, no, mate, it's not a US matter. Well, this is my lawyer. So if he's saying it's not a US matter, obviously he knows I'm safe. He goes, mate, it's an Australian matter. You have nothing to worry about. I'm like, all right, I'll agree. You want me to go to the Beverly Hills police station, and what do you want me to do? He goes, I'll be in on the meeting with the New South Wales Organized Crime Squad. I'll be there. I want you to tell your story that I gave you and let them know where the money came from, so they understand that they need to give it back to us. I'm like, all right, if this is what you want me to do, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take your legal advice. Remember, this is someone that's supposed to protect you, right? So I get on this call, and I got the New South Wales police there, and I'm like, okay, well, where's my lawyer? He's supposed to be there. He's like, your lawyer's not here. I said, well, let's call him. So you'll see this on the documentary. I call my lawyer, and I said, hey, Michael, where are you at, man? You're my lawyer. You're supposed to represent me. He says, Mike, don't worry about it. I told you it's not a U.S. matter. Just tell the story that I told you to tell. Now we got to fast forward. I get arrested, 2015, September 9th. This room with my new lawyer. I'm sitting there, and he pushes play on this little cassette tape of discovery he has. It was the interview from that meeting. He says, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen anybody do. He says, what were you thinking? He goes, this right here is probably what got you indicted. You just sealed the deal. So September 9th, I get arrested. It's September 10th in Australia. They arrest my contact in Australia, Andrew McManus, this concert promoter, and the lawyer. So my first lawyer in the US, he says, you know what, we could probably, you're looking at a life sentence on. I said, life sentence? I've never even got a traffic ticket. What are you talking about, a life sentence? Fast forward, 2 years go by, I still haven't done anything. I haven't talked, I haven't done anything. My lawyer finally comes back, he says, man, I can't get you any deal. You got to either cooperate or you got to plead to the 30 years, right? I said, 30 years? Fuck that, man. I ain't pleading to no 30 years. And this is the kicker. He says, after the 30 years that you do in the US, you have a life sentence in Australia. So finally, my family does some research, and they get one of the best lawyers in San Diego. He represented the Arellano Felix cartel, right? Okay. He says, you are facing a life sentence. You are going to get extradited. There's no doubt about it. I'm like, man, I'm just like, my heart drops, right? I'm like, that's it. My life's over. 30 years, life sentence in Australia. So, and he says, you got to have Australia come over here, the authorities, and the prosecution in the U.S. have to come together, and you are going to go in and tell on yourself. I said, what do you mean I got to tell? He says, everyone on your case has already pled guilty. This is in April of 2017. Remember, we were arrested in 2015. Everyone's already taken deals. Like, who are they going to ask about? I'm thinking, like, through my head, like, okay. You go in this meeting with the government. They know everything already. People don't understand that. You're going into something that if you lie, it's over. The deal's off the table. So I went up the chain, right? Okay. I called Matt. I said, Matty, I said, this is on the federal phone. I said, they're trying to give me 30 years in the feds. I said, they want to extradite me to the U.S. I said, they're making me go tell on myself. I said, it's going to help me in the long run. I said, I'm not going to get people indicted. I'm not telling on the cartel. I'm not telling on the mob. I said, but I got to tell the truth, man. Like, how did I meet Paulie? I met him through a bookie named Matt. He says, Owen, they already know about me. He goes, I'm not worried. He says, do what you got to do. You ain't doing no 30 years. This is how the lawyers in Mexico work. No one really knows this. But they come in and they have a file and they say, Mr. Hanson, you know who we're here with. We think this information in here could help you get your sentence off. A reduction. I said, what can I do, man? I'm thinking, right? I said, I know what I can do. I said, I'm not lying. I can do this. And I asked the lawyer. I said, I picked up a passport for El Jefe. I picked it up in Guatemala when I had to pick up one of my passports because we had fake names. I said, am I allowed to use the name I saw, El Jefe's name? Am I allowed to use that name, Hector Velasquez? Because that's the name I saw him as on the picture. They're like, we allow that. We'll allow that. So I want to break down this paperwork because no one on this paperwork has ever done any time off of my testimony against me telling on myself. These people were arrested already that are involved in Australia. Boom, the first question, let's read it. Line 28 through 29, they're asking me, okay, we want to know about your drug importation into Australia. In relation to 2011, I originally came out to Australia to help a male called Rafa import cocaine into Sydney from Los Angeles. I was referred to Rafa by Hector, whom resides in Mexico. Hector was one of my contacts that I have also described later in my statement. He has been a supplier of cocaine to me in the U.S. I had dealings with him right to my arrest in 2015. I also refer to Hector as being Mexican Hugo. That is another name I use for him. In 2013, 2014, Hector was bringing in cocaine importation of about 75 kilograms at a time from Mexico. I was able to buy some of that cocaine. Line item 29. Hector introduced me to Rafa through BlackBerry emails. Hector originally knew Rafa from Europe. Hector and Rafa had been working together in Spain and some parts of Europe. I believe they were sending cocaine from the US or Mexico into Europe. It is one thing I never asked in detail, though it wasn't my business. I just told on a guy named Rafa, right? Rafa was killed in 2014. Suspect murder of Rafa Joseph. The New South Wales government has announced a $1 million reward for information into the 2014, remember that year, 2014, disappearance and suspect murder of Rafa Joseph. Herc, when did I get arrested? 2015. When did I tell this statement? 2017. So I told on a dead guy.
Yeah.
Line item 40 says, I would be told to go to various apartments in Sydney, wait for packages to be delivered by DHL or FedEx. After I have verified the package had cocaine, I would leave the package in an apartment and someone would collect it. The cocaine was sold at low price. However, the group made approximately $500,000 per month. But guess what? I don't know who any of these people are because you got to remember, when we talk on these encrypted phones, we know people as Mexican Hugo, like I told you. I was Don Corleone. But what he doesn't understand is this interview was given on April 2017. He got arrested way before then, so this has nothing to do with him. So one of the key components to my indictment was I used to send all my product through a chocolate company. And there were two brothers from USC. And I had hired them and I was giving them $50,000 a month to basically give me expired pallets of chocolates. And when I got indicted with 23 people, the two brothers weren't on there. So I'm thinking to myself, well, hell, if they've been watching us, they obviously know about the brothers, right? These guys are the key component of my logistics. I'm putting the kilos of cocaine in their chocolate and we're using their vehicles to move the chocolate. So I'm thinking to myself, why haven't these guys been indicted, right? Why aren't they on my indictment? So I do some research. I have, like I said, I have the cartel attorneys coming in. I have my attorney coming in. and they say, hey, you know those brothers? They said, we just found out that they're working with the FBI and DEA. And guess what? They're trying to take down El Jefe. People want to say, oh, you're telling on people in the business. Well, listen, these guys were working with the U.S. authorities, FBI and the DEA. So when I went in on this meeting and told them what they did, of course they know. No one in this paperwork was not arrested. They were arrested the same day I was. And let's go to line item 68. Paulie Iotti would pick up from LBB to take them to DHL. I met Paulie through a friend of mine that is a bookie. His name is Matt Boyer. He is a bookie in Orange County. Paulie is a client of his. We would play golf, and I met him through golf. Paulie was looking for work. He has a gambling problem, so I put him to work. He ended up owing me, and he was always in the hole. He had a bad gambling problem. I would give him a $10,000 line of credit on my gambling website, BetODOG. He would lose it, then he would be working for me for free. Like, this man had a gambling problem. I had to put him to work.
Oh, God.
But I knew Paulie wasn't indicted, so I knew I had to tell him how I met Paulie. I knew this was going to come back around. That's why I made that phone call to Matt. Since I told him myself and I admitted responsibility, it's called taking responsibility, right?
Yeah.
You get 2 points off, sometimes
off,
3.
Right. That's right.
You know, so you get those 3 points off, so that 30 went down to like 21. How am I going to get time off for something that already had happened? Yeah. Now, if I went in before, and this was in like 2013, this interview, and they got arrested in 15, then I would get time off. But that's how the government works. You don't get time off for telling on yourself. The government was asking for 20 years. My lawyer was asking for 10 because that was the mandatory minimum. The judge didn't agree. He felt that this was worth 21 years, and that's what he gave me, 255 months. I'm in prison now, like 3, 4, let's see, I was in 2017, 2020, and at 2 in the morning, I get a call. Hanson, report to R&D. I'm like, what? This is 2 in the morning, and the correctional officer comes, he goes, you're getting extradited to Australia. I can't get a hold of my lawyer. They're like, no, you can't talk to him. We'll let you talk to him once you get to Australia.
And I don't ever be tripping off of what ain't mine. And I be hearing the shit you say through the grapevine. But jealousy is just love and hate at the same time. Yeah, it's been that way from the beginning.